Stories from the dawn of time have had characters with noticeable flaws. Even main characters have flawed choices or moments, and those serve as flaws that allow our protagonist to grow and seem relatable. Lion King is a prime example of this, as we first see Simba embracing a worry-free lifestyle, which later serves to make his redemptive arc that much more impactful. But what about characters that are written to be fundamentally flawed? How do we accept and see those flaws, especially if they aren't so blatant? Well, grab your snorkel and let's dive right in. Hey there, hey, you're gonna talk about my movie, right? We're gonna get there, Joe. Just hold your doggone horses, sweet prince. The first example of this is the fully flawed character, which shouldn't be confused with straight-up villainy. Jack Torrance isn't flawed at the end of The Shining, he's full-on deranged. He's lost agency in himself to be understood as evil, similar to an insanity defense in law. Instead, these specific flaws in these characters make them irredeemable. Examples include Howard from Uncut Gems, Cusco from Emperor's New Groove, and our first main point, BoJack Horseman. Haha, more like BoJack Horseman! BoJack is a really good character study of someone who is fundamentally flawed at his core, but trying to get better. His personality is defined by alcoholism, narcissism, and oftentimes lacking empathy to those around him. Just your average neighborhood-friendly horseman. Sure, BoJack was given a pretty bad upbringing, which is a huge part of the show, but BoJack still kept making these choices to be a flawed person and to continually put his friends in really toxic environments.
Todd, I'm sorry, all right? I screwed up. I know I screwed up. I don't know why.
Oh, great. Of course. Here it comes. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep doing shitty things and then feel bad about yourself like that makes it okay. You need to be better.
The writing on the show walks a very thin tightrope of making an irredeemable protagonist on a comedy show still be entertaining. Sometimes it can play BoJack's toxicity for laughs, but when it needs to, it really explores what makes him flawed as an individual. BoJack is a bad person with moments of good. It's the exact opposite of Simba, as these moments of goodness seemingly trick you into thinking there could finally be a monumental change in this character, which makes his shifts back to his toxic ways that much more saddening. A flawed character by circumstance is where their flaws are because they are a victim of circumstances, or the means by which they achieve a task aren't exactly the most ethical. I lump these together because they are more of a murky area of flaws that you see and think, well, it's not like they're that bad if they weren't raised like this or if they changed their approach. It's kind of like Tesla. Sure, they're doing great innovations, but they are ruled by a goober version of Iron Man who loves calling people pedos and wanting to lower minimum wage. Examples of this include what we see in the early stages of Walter White in Breaking Bad, where he does bad things for good reasons, Syndrome in The Incredibles for wanting to balance the scales of the haves and have-nots, Zuko in Avatar as he's born into a hateful father and an evil predetermined life, or virtually all the characters in Princess Mononoke choosing to let their hate consume them for a fight for a good cause. But there is one recent example that I think shines above the rest. Killmonger is a really good example of a flawed antagonist who was created by circumstances and the choices he makes to achieve his goal. Killmonger is correct in wanting to put an end to oppression and racism against people of African descent and wanting this utopian society to step in and finally help. But he is also flawed in a lot of ways he tries to get results, whether it's working with Claw or pitting the people of Wakanda against each other to killing a lot of people in the process of making the world a better place. He definitely has a break a few eggs to make an omelet type of viewpoint. But these ideas don't default T'Challa as an unflawed protagonist, as he's in sort of a moral gray area as his antagonist, as our hero would more than likely follow the status quo if none of this were brought to his attention in such a flashy way. Even Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, came out to say he views T'Challa as being a bad guy, which adds so much more murkiness to a really, really interesting project. Sir, I thought you were going to talk about me. I saved the best for last. Come on, buddy. A character that is flawed by opinion could be lumped into flawed by approach, as that can be up to the viewer. Art is subjective and left up for the audiences to interpret, so there's going to be a lot of differentiation on what every person would think is okay. For instance, I personally might think it's not okay to up and leave your husband and move off with the star athlete of the Washington Wizards, but you might disagree, Sharon! Please call me back. I miss you. Also, I hope John is treating you well. I put your picture away.
sat down and cried today.
Examples include Amy and Nick Dunn in Gone Girl, literally every character Michael Cera has ever played, Troy and Gabriella in High School Musical, or the final example, Tom from 500 Days of Summer. I think a lot of people, more than likely male, watch 500 Days of Summer and see Sad Boy Tom as doing nothing wrong, and Summer as being the reason things didn't work out. In a lot of ways, this film serves to be a counterpoint to the typical manic pixie dream girl trope. As Tom feeds into those same fantasies, he becomes arrogant to the actual reality of the situation. Now, wait a minute. You loved me when you were younger. What gives? This is true. I thought Tom was a wonderful head over heels in love guy, and Summer was being cold-hearted to the situation. With every rewatch, there's different layers added to it and growth that I've made as a person. It's easy to embrace Tom at first because you are getting his perspective on the film, so you tend to root for him, especially if you see yourself in him at the beginning of the film. The film makes it very clear that Tom isn't listening and understanding the needs and wants of Summer, and instead he moves his own wants and needs in the front seat of their relationship. I think the end also leaves a lot of ambiguity. If Tom is a flawed character, is he going to actually learn from his past mistakes, or is he going to be the same goober putting blinders onto the obvious signs of problems starting? Ultimately, 500 Days of Summer lets you decide on this, which is why it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So you got to this point and you realized, am I a flawed character? Maybe there's a reason Sharon left me, because I kept slurping spaghetti loudly right in front of her, and leaving her at the house alone to go play tech decks with the fellas. Maybe Sharon deserves someone who prioritizes her more than I ever could. Anyway, I think a film can really thrive with flaws or flawed situations. They can create really interesting character progressions, moral discussions between audiences, or shine a light on your own personal flaws. I'd actually love to hear any recommendations on films that are a good discussion about flaws of characters. I think Gone Girl is the best litmus test for this, as no matter what you think, you're probably going to disagree with someone on some parts of the film. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for the Amy Dunn is a hero camp, but man oh man does she do some sus decision making to get by. That's the video. If you somehow got to the end of this, hit the subscribe button, maybe, who knows, and a like. Maybe it would put a smile on Joseph Gordon-Levitt's face. That's what it would do. That's what you're doing when you touch those buttons. So give them a little wiggle. We don't want a sad JGL, dude. Come on. Touch the like button. Do you want me to tell Joseph? Do you want me to tell Mr. Levitt? Touch the sub button. He's waiting. Come on. Touch it.